If your deck bounces when you walk on it, I know why. And it's about a $50 fix. I'm Dr. Decks, 500 decks, 35 years. Here's what nobody tells you. You already have blocking on your deck. It's just in the wrong spot. So we're about to install mid-span pressure blocking into this deck. As we're framing, we have all the joists set, but we still have some blocking to do. You can see how easily these joists move back and forth. Once we put the decking down, if we don't have these joists nice and straight and they don't stay that way, things can move around. But we're making this deck bulletproof so it doesn't move, it doesn't squeak. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna take blocks that are cut to the proper length. Now, you can't just measure the middle of the deck and expect to have the right size block. You really need to measure either at the house or measure at the beam where the joists are pinned and locked into place. So we took our measurements from the house and then transferred them to the center of the deck. So this block may or may not fit into this hole depending on how we cut. So notice this is kind of tight, but when I push away on the joists, that's a nice fit. So now, as we put these blocks in, the joists are gonna become one, which is gonna make things a lot more solid. There's another reason why we use mid-span pressure blocking. It's to help avoid deflection, where the deck joists are like this and they wanna go like this, up and down. If your joists are overspanned, nothing is going to fix it. This method will help minimize joist bounce, but it may not eliminate it because of how far you're spanning your joist. So always check your span chart. There's plenty on the internet that you can look at. All right, but if you'll notice, now I'm pushing the same amount of force, but they're not moving as much because now I'm pushing against two joists. Once I add another block in here, it gets harder to push. So it's locking all the framing together as one versus individual pieces. One thing you gotta remember, always subset your blocking. So it might be nice to have them nice and flush and perfect to the top, but if you put in a screw and something slips and this becomes higher than the joist like that, that is a pain to fix. You either have to plane it, we've already taped these joists, you're gonna be ruining your tape, you gotta get these down below, or when you put your decking across here, you're gonna have big problems because this is way too high and it's gonna be a mess trying to fix. So the way to alleviate that, it's okay to put them an 1/8 inch lower. And we've already chalked the line, and then we've put a line on each side of each joist, and we're gonna stagger these. They don't have to be in a direct line. If you try to put all these blocks in a direct line like this, then you have more work to put in the fasteners because they're not as easy to install. Now for this installation, you would have to go like this, instead of just being able to go like this, and then the other block going this way like so. For this installation, we're gonna use a 4-inch Fasten Master Timberlock structural construction lag. And the reason I'm using this instead of a structural screw or any kind of a framing screw or framing nails, all those can squeak as you walk across the deck. These lock in. It's designed to bring things together and hold them together for the future. So we're gonna use timber locks so that it minimizes any motion of squeaking when you're walking across the deck. Trust me guys, we've had this issue in the past. If you're doing blocking over a beam, like over here, air nails will be okay, or pneumatic gun or whatever, framing nails is probably okay because the blocks are sitting on the beam. That's a different kind of blocking. So then we've had to come back and actually, instead of using framing nails, we went back and added these and it eliminated the squeaks or minimized them. And sometimes shrinking can cause squeaks as well. All right, so where do you put your mid-span pressure blocking? Well, the joists are 14 feet long, but the beam's at 11 feet, okay? So I took from where the joists are pinned at 11 feet back to the wall. So the joists are spanning about 11 feet. So I went 5.5 feet and I chalked a line across here, nice straight line. And then I drew my indicator lines on each side of that chalk line on the sides of the joists so that if this gets erased, I still have an identifiable line on each side. So I know where that joist needs to go. I am gonna pre-drill my holes. It just helps the screw go in faster and goes in a little bit easier. So I'm gonna start down here, work my way this way. Here we go, got my block. I've got my line, and this fits really nice. It's just really a tiny bit loose. So I'm gonna bring a clamp over, and I'm gonna use this clamp to kind of cinch this together. And then I'm gonna line it up with my line. For this particular installation, I'm gonna run 2 screws per side per block. So I'm gonna drill 2 holes. And then run 2 fasteners on this side. And then I'm gonna do the same thing over here. I'm sub level, which is great. That's one. Now we're gonna stagger these blocks. Now notice this block, see that? That means that this joist is too far over, and we're gonna bring it in like so. Gonna straighten this up. Again, subset. What's cool about staggering is I can get my drill in here, I can get my screws in here. If the screw's proud, I'm not trying to force the block around the screw. You can even pre-drill both sides if you want. All right, now that I got a couple in, I'm gonna check this line really quick and make sure that it's pretty straight. And if I'm happy with that, I'll keep moving. If not, I'll make an adjustment. That looks pretty good. It does have a slight dip in it. So let's see how the next block fits. This block looks a little short. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the clamp from the bottom. I'm gonna go ahead and clamp this up, and then I'm gonna make an assessment of how far this is going in, because it may be a little too much. I might have to cut a little bit bigger block. Yeah, we're shrinking a little bit. Okay, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna double check 12 3/4. Yeah, that's 12 3/4. Let's check this block for, it's more like 12 1/2 plus. So I'm gonna go cut one at 12 3/4. Now we've got a pretty straight joist. We're just gonna keep running the blocks as planned and finish out our run. All right, so our mid-span pressure blocking is done. Now we're gonna go on to some roll blocking that's above the beam. It also helps with the cantilever. That's the part of the joist that go past the beam. It helps keep things a little sturdier, and so there's not as much deflection when you're cantilevering past the beam. These blocks are pre-cut. I'm gonna go ahead and start installing them. We're gonna stagger these as well, and we're just gonna stagger them to the end of each section of the 6x beam. So it'll be right, left, right, left, right, left, all the way down. There'll be a little bit more space in between the stagger, but it's gonna do the same concept that the mid-span pressure blocking does, except that these blocks are gonna sit flat on the beam. The joists are 7 1/4 inches thick. We took these and ripped these down to 7 inches so that we make sure that these blocks sit below the level of the joist. Very important. It's a quick and simple step to make sure that these blocks don't sit proud once you install them. They're gonna go in like so. I told the guys to cut them a little bit short so that they go in easy instead of trying to force them in. Because once you start trying to bang them in, you can start moving joists back and forth and it becomes very difficult. This one's pretty snug, but still will fit nicely into the joist bay, like so. And then you might take your square and just double check and make sure it's sitting square. I did not pre-draw these lines. And for this part of the install, we're gonna use 4-inch structural screws, MVP screws by Fasten Master. It'll be 2 screws per side. Because we're sitting on a beam, we don't need to use those bigger structural legs like we did with the 4-inch timber locks in the mid-span. So we'll get this installed. Sometimes when you tighten one side of the block in, it'll raise the other side. So you wanna make sure these stay down. You want them flat on top of the beam. So you might add an auxiliary screw right here to help hold the block down. Remember, we wanna keep below the level of the top of the joist. Now I can go ahead and knock this side in. If you have a clamp, you can also do this. Now watch right here. When I tighten this down, now you're nice and snug. You're sitting on the beam, which was what you want. And now I can go ahead and put these fasteners in and lock it down and it won't move. Same deck, same spot, 2 hours later. Nothing. That's not more lumber, that's lumber in the right place. Now go bounce on your own deck and tell me in the comments what you felt. And if it moved, watch this next. 3 details that tell me a deck wasn't built by a pro.